Hello, welcome to Demand Blue's webinar for best practices for migrating your data with Salesforce. My name is Sindhuja, and I'm part of the partner success team here at Demand Blue. We are an on-demand services provider for Salesforce. Our expertise ranges far and wide of the Salesforce ecosystem of products, clouds, and platforms. To learn more and unleash the power of Salesforce, connect with us at Demand Blue. Our speaker for today is Arun Govindan, our Director of Customer Success. If you have questions for him during the presentation, please type it up in the Q&A box down below. We will answer them halfway through the presentation and at the end. With that, let's tune in to Arun.
Yeah, thank you, Sindhuja, for the detailed introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Arun Govindan. I am with Demand Blue for the last, I believe, 14 plus years now. I'm holding Salesforce System Architect certification as well as project management and other certifications as well. So this is my LinkedIn profile. If you have any questions after the session as well, feel free to message me via this LinkedIn profile, DM me, and I'm more than happy to provide you with any clarifications as well. So without further delays, we'll quickly move on. The presentation, whatever we are providing today, focuses primarily for more of knowledge sharing rather than any promotional activities. The agenda for today, we will go through in detail about what is data migration all about, what are all the common failures, as well as the impact with respect to data migration and how to overcome them. And also the 6 key attributes when it comes to data migration. And best practices with respect to data migration, we are trying to connect, there were 34 different best practices, and we were trying to connect those best practices with these attributes so that it will be very well connected between those slides, and also the common error handling related mechanisms. That's at a very high level about the agenda. Introduction, when it comes to data migration, first question that comes to the mind is what's the difference between a data migration and data integration. So data migration, it's a one-time transference of data which occurs when implementing basically any new application. So even though we call that as a one-time transference, technically it is a 3 times, one in dev, one in QA, and one in prod. But that's all about data migration. Whereas when it comes to data integration, it's an ongoing transference of data between the applications, which keeps the business running on a day-to-day basis. That's the key difference when it comes to data migration versus integration. So migration is a connecting bridge between your source and the target system. These are all 3 common use cases which you may come across when it comes to data migration. One of them is whenever the team is moving from on-premise to a cloud, or when you are moving from one technology to the other. The best use case is you are trying to take a backup of information from Salesforce and then passing on to a SQL server for any reporting needs. Those are all like transitioning or moving from one technology to the other. And the third common use case is modernizing your legacy applications, either your mainframe or a SAP-based applications, and to an advanced one. So those are all 3 common use cases where data migration has been used most commonly. And the common reasons when it comes to failure for data migration, the fear of failure, this is one of the recent surveys which indicates like there is a 38% of the data migration projects normally fails under these common reasons. One is the source data, the proper analysis, the team haven't gone through a proper analysis of this source data before proceeding with the data migration, or otherwise the migration process itself is not well defined. Or the third option will be like there is no rollback mechanism in place. If they just went ahead and did the data migration, either most of them may do it directly in production That's again against the best practice, but still, due to the time crunch or due to various reasons, they may perform those activities directly in production without any backup options in place. And that is also another common reason for failure. And the last one is inadequate testing methodology. The team may believe the data migration went through successfully, and after a few days or a few weeks down the lane, they start getting more and more issues from the business users. Those are all the common reasons when it comes to this data migration related failures. And the impacts due to these failures is huge. So one of them is the data integrity. Your credibility of the data itself will be a question once you start losing the data or corrupting the data. And the second thing is your upper management, most likely they may be performing, they may be generating reports, or they may be generating some Einstein-based predictive analysis based on the data, and the data itself is incorrect, means their decision-making process will be more challenging. And the third common failure will be like extended downtime due to this process, because if there is an issue reported, then you have to fix the problem, and you have to analyze the problem first, then come up with the root cause analysis, and then fix the problem. This extended downtime due to this data failures will cause a huge revenue impact. And the last one is on this audit or the non-compliance related. Any complaints related challenges that you may come across due to this data loss is also something you need to account for. So now comes the key question: how to win when it comes to this data migration. And that's where the objective of this session. We were trying to simplify as much as we can, and we brought in 6 key attributes when it comes to this the data migration in place. So these 6 attributes, these are all not the only 6 attributes, but these are all the 6 primary attributes which we came across based on our experiences from the past. One of them is a well-planned execution in place. The attribute number 2 is automation. Try to avoid human intervention via automating the processes as much as we can. Third option is more control over the data. Fourth option is reversible, more like a rollback in the technical terms. Attribute number 5 is repairable. In case of any issues, how to fix the problem is a repairable category. And attribute number 6 is testable. The very first one is the well-planned one. So when it comes to well-planned, this is by far the most important attribute. So failure to meet any of the other 5 attributes can be mitigated as long as you have a well plan in place. The remaining 5 attributes you will be able to mitigate very easily. But there is nothing much we can do if at all the planning itself is flawed. So your migration plan should look like more like a project plan that includes timelines, dependencies, milestones, and all other details. I've shared a sample well-planned, again, this is just a starting related. So whenever you are starting a new project when it comes to data migration, these are all the top 10 questions which you may come across before even designing your project charter or a requirement spec document. So once you have, this is like a framework of 10 key questions that you may come across, you may get those clarified, and then only your analysis then the design process will start eventually. So it should be like end-to-end. Your planning should be always be end-to-end. It is like changing the tire while the vehicle itself is running. So how many days to switch off the system is the best example when it comes to well planning. So for example, you may have a large volume of data involved in the data migration. Then as part of planning stage itself, you should know when to provide a cutoff for how long the production downtime is going to be, and you need to have a common agreement with respect to the business, set the expectations clearly to your stakeholders. Even to that level of production deployment and support related should be addressed as part of well planned itself. That's your first attribute. Attribute number 2 is automation. That automation, technically it enables you to redo your migration with a minimal effort and with complete certainty that the results will be the same. So this might bring in a technical question, because when I define data migration, I have highlighted as one-time transference of data. Then what the purpose of automation? The main key of the automation is to avoid any human error, and your simple migration plan itself involves 3 minimal scheduled runs: one for dev, one for QA/UAT, and one for production. So that's where your automation will play a vital role of avoiding the human error and save time as much as you can. So the common tools that you will be using is any of the middleware specific tools, or even a data loader, Informatica, data import wizard. Any of them will fall under as part of the common tools that you can use for this automation. The attribute number 3 is control of data, control of what data you will be migrating. In general, this control is always advisable to be centralized as much as you can. So we can set one parameter that filter out your data set while maintaining the referential integrity. So the most common use case for the controllable attribute is like if the customer is asking you, simply they will tell like we want to migrate the account. That doesn't mean only the account. There may be account roles and other dependent objects involved. The customer may not explicitly specify because they trust the technical team and they will simply say they want the account migration. As part of well plan, you need to ask the questions of what are all the things to be included in addition to the account, what are all the dependent objects, account role, and other details. And as part of control, you need to have, based on the well planned scope in place, your control will control what are all the data associated with these objects to be included. So that's why these attributes are interconnected with each other. So the attribute number 4 is reversible. Reversible is again the ability to undo a data migration either fully or partially in a more controlled way. 3 common use cases where reversible can be applied. One is deletion of all data from the org. This is a common use case when if the target system is a fresh implementation of Salesforce migration altogether, then this use case number 1 of deleting all the data from the org will add more value. But the use case number 2 is if you want to delete a specific selected records from the org, or the use case number 3, which is set the field value back to what it was there previously. This use case number 2 and 3 comes whenever there is a migration from one set of data to the other set of data in the target org. That means this is not a fresh implementation, and if there is an existing implementation, and that is where this use case number 2 and 3 will come in. It is always advisable to do a complete rollback rather than doing a selective rollback when it comes to data migration. This is based on our experiences in the past, because selective rollback is always complicated due to the dependency of other data. For example, if you are doing a rollback of the specific set of records in account object, there may be some interdependency of account object to some other dependent objects, or even there may be some logic return in the backend apex level based on these account object values. There may be some other objects that may be impacted as well. So it is highly advisable to do a complete rollback rather than specific set of data. That's attribute number 4. Now comes attribute number 5, which is repairable. Repairable by definition is more of ability to fix the data in a very targeted way after a mistake has been found. Mistakes do happen. There is always, you need to account for the scope for mistakes. The key when it comes to mistakes is the team should be aware that the mistakes do happen, and you need to have a proper mitigation plan in place so that it is easy to fix things as and when it occurs. So the key objective behind this repairable attribute is isolate the problem and try to fix it. One common example that I can highlight for repairable is any date format related issues in a specific field. For example, if you are trying to migrate using a data loader, and the Excel file, the date format, whatever you have generated out is different from the date format in the target org. So that is one specific problem which you can isolate and fix, which comes under the category of repairable attribute. The last attribute, which but not the least, which plays a very vital role, is a testable attribute. The testable, by definition, it refers to the ease with which we as the users can test the data. So if you have your transformation rules well defined, well documented, then your testing will be relatively simple. Your transformation is like your staging table or any of the middleware business rules that you are implementing that will be categorized under a transformation, or even the mapping document. So when it comes to testable, your product, your end product, you may end up generating a report And that report should not be limited to a summary count, because in many use cases, whatever we have seen is people will tend to create a summary report from source and the target. They may create like, let's assume if it is account, contact, and opportunity or in scope for migration, they will create a summary report of how many accounts, how many contacts, and how many opportunities. And they will provide a summary of source versus destination comparison. At a high level, it may look appealing, but it is not generally recommended. Your testable product, end product, will be a detailed report rather than a summary report, because every row and every field within that row matters when it comes to this data migration. The most common deliverable which we will provide usually for data migration is a detailed report that includes all the fields in the source, all the fields in the destination, and a small utility which will compare between source and destination each individual fields and provide probably an Excel or some summary or a detailed report that talks about each field level comparison and what are all the discrepancies and what are all the reason behind the discrepancies, and also any error files that got generated out of data migration, because some of those error files they may need to be addressed individually by the business users. So please ensure your testable output will be as much detailed as you can to avoid any last minute surprises for your stakeholders. So it is always important to have a test strategy in place, and it is highly recommended to do these activities on a full copy sandbox, so that it will be a near replica of your production, and you will be able to test all these functionalities altogether. So that's at a high level on 6 key attributes when it comes to the migration. The next one is the best practices for the migration. Before we move on to best practices, I thought of putting a pause here and ask if there are any questions from the team so far on whatever I have gone through. Okay, we'll proceed then. So the best practices with respect to this attribute mapping is there were 34 specific best practices we have created. I will try to make it as detailed as I can as part of going through them itself. And this green highlighted ones are the 6 key attributes whichever we have gone through. I'm trying to connect these tags along with this best practices so that you will be able to connect easily what is associated with what. So the practice number 1 is have a detailed plan in place that includes your project plan, your mitigation plan, your deployment plan. All kind of detailed planning should be in place. Practice number 2 is review your charter with your key stakeholders. Identify your stakeholders well in advance when it comes to migration. Identify your key super users well in advance. Review the charter with them, understand the scope, have an agreement with the business users so that you can avoid any last minute surprises from that. Attribute number 3 is always partner with your project manager so that what you need to execute next, you will always need to be in sync with your the product manager, project manager, and the entire team of stakeholders. Practice number 4 is always start early in the game when it comes to migration, because people tend to think like data migration is a last activity prior to go live, and they may overlook things. So it is always advisable to start well ahead of time, because for if you are doing any backend coding and all, it is always a possibility to do a rollback and other details. But when it comes to data migration, since you are doing very close to the cutoff date, it is always advisable to have a detailed backup plan in place. So it's always recommended to start early as much as you can. Practice number 5 is you have to understand your source data scope of the source data. Any questions related to those source data related discrepancies that you may come across, and analyze the data as much as you can to understand the reality behind them. This practice number 5 if you remember, as part of some of the key failures when it comes to data migration, we talked about the source data related analysis. It is one of the key common failures when it comes to this data migration. So analyze as much as you can, clarify the questions as much as early as possible. So practice number 6 is document your transformation. Your transformation module is the key business logic, your Bible for the entire data migration project altogether. Whether it may be a simple mapping sheet or it may be a middleware-based business logic, whatever your transformation logic is, document as much as you can so that you will be able to review and accommodate the changes as and when required. Practice number 7 is centralize your data transformation activities altogether. As much as possible, bring your business logic within your data transformation module. So as and when any minor adjustments that you need to make, any new changes that you have to incorporate, you should be able to easily accommodate one as long as you have a centralized place for this data transformation. This use case number 7 came in, like there were scenarios which we have seen where data transformation they have used only for mapping, and any mapping related business rules they might have written at the target arc. The challenge with that model is your data transformation is separated from your business rules, and generally you have to fix any problem or if you come across any new issues, usually your recovery time will be much longer if you are not maintaining a centralized data transformation. That's why this use case number 7 will play a vital role in your detailed design. Practice number 8, you might have came across this in multiple occasions, even in the programming world or even in the functionality thing. It is always advisable, do not hard code any of those Salesforce IDs, because whenever you change from one environment to the other, your IDs will be unique pertain to the environment, and it will your entire logic will start breaking. So it is advisable to avoid any hard-coded values. Practice number 9 is load your data as per the object hierarchy, because when you are maintaining a proper object hierarchy in place, it is always advisable to load your data in that particular order to avoid any duplication of effort. Practice number 10 is somewhat connected with 9. 9 is related with loading, 10 is related with deletion of records. So whenever there is a scope for deleting the records in the target arc, for example, in one of the use cases, the requirement itself is you have to delete the existing records in target before migrating the data. So in those cases, it is always recommended to delete the child followed by the parent. Otherwise, if you are deleting the parent without child, if it is a master detail relationship, then there are no issues. But if at all there is no master detail relationship, and if at all you are trying to delete the parent alone, then it may be an orphan child and you may overlook and ignore the data. And later on, your data integrity will be a questionable one. So it is always advisable to delete child followed by parent and follow the hierarchy as and when possible. Those are all 10 key practices. I'll quickly move on to the practice number 11. So don't always remember, you need to maintain the owner information, record type information, and all other source related vital informations. Because if you are migrating from one Salesforce org to another, for an example, and if the owner information itself is not matching, the use case, the sample or example associated with this is you are migrating the data, and let's assume you as an admin, you are trying to migrate, and all the owner informations, owner name, account owner, and everything is mapped to the admin, then it will turn meaningless. Instead of your sales team, everything will get assigned to the owner name will get assigned to the admin, and the validity of data will be questionable. So it's always advisable to maintain your owner details as well as the record type details as and when required. Practice number 12, automate as much as you can. This is one of the key attributes as well from our 6 attribute session. So it is always better to avoid any manual intervention and try to automate whenever possible. Practice number 13 is use proper tools. Either it is migration related tool like a data loader or Informatica or any other middleware, as well as any duplication, deduplication related, any other tools. Always use proper tools as and when required. Practice number 14, build a library of reusable codes in place. So the common use case will be if you are designing a proper error framework in place, a logging mechanism is in place, those kind of things will be treated as a reusable code. Even if you are massaging the data before placing it in the target arc, and that whatever the data massaging, you may end up performing the same for multiple objects. In those cases, your data massaging will be an utility, and that will be executed at the transformation level, means those will be treated as a reusable code. So avoid duplication of code for better maintenance purpose. Practice number 15 is the duplicate management. Turn off duplicate management. Again, this particular practice number 15 is not a common best practice related. It depends on your org centric. You have to make the decision. The duplicate management can be controlled in two different ways. It's the most common two different ways will be like either you will be handling your duplicate management at the staging level itself as part of transformation layer. You can do a staging cleanup before you migrate the data onto the target arc. Or otherwise, you can perform the duplicate management via any utility like a dupe catcher or a demand tool or anything in place on the target arc. Or you can simply turn off the duplicate management, migrate all the data, and after migrating, you will take care of merging the data as well. So you have to pick and choose depending on your use case. But the normal common practice is turn off the duplicate management, and it can be handled offline. This practice number 15 will help with quick migration for production. So practice number 16 is have a mechanism to control the data, which data to get migrated, because there may be scenarios where your source org may have 400 different fields. There is no point in migrating all the 400 fields when the business themselves want only 10 key fields. So always check with business, clarify what is the scope, and get the control over the entire set of data that needs to be included in the scope. Practice number 17, even though it's a simple one, like fix the code, not the data, which is you may came across in many occasions, but this plays a vital role, because whenever you find a problem, try to identify the root cause for the problem. This is very, very critical when it comes to data migration. If you try to fix the data rather than the problem, it may come across for a different set of record, and you may lose the confidence of your business stakeholders. So it is always advisable to analyze thoroughly, identify what is the root cause behind the problem, and try to fix the problem in a generalized way rather than specific to that record set. Practice number 18, fix the errors with the parent objects before move on with the child. This is more like validate at every stage during the migration. That's the intention behind this practice. So if at all, a use case will be like you are trying to upload a parent object, and you try to upload the child object in parallel, even though parent object has 20 different errors that came in after parent object migration. And without addressing them, when you try to move towards child, there may be scenarios where after fixing the parent, you may need to redo the child migration as well. So just check the error, see what kind of error it is, and then decide whether to fix them before moving on with the child. Practice number 19, every record you are inserting, always it is advisable to have the external ID. If at all your source org is not having any external ID, it is advisable to create one either at the source level or even at the transformation level in the very worst case scenario. If you have no control over source, at least create them at the transformation level, because your external ID is like an unique identifier, and that will tell even at the testing strategy that you are going to create, it will be purely based on your external ID. That will tell clearly what is in the source and what is the relevant mapping in the target. So always this practice number 19 is very, very a key practice to be followed whenever it comes to data migration. Practice number 20, do not use the external ID for anything other than your migration or even your integration. we came across one of the business use case where they started writing some business rules and started changing some of those logics based on the external ID. And in fact, they ended up changing the external ID itself based on the business rules, which is highly not recommended. Because your external ID is the connector between your source and the target, and it should be limited only for your migration or integration specific activities alone. Your practice number 21 is use upsert as and when possible, so that this will help with avoiding data duplication during your migration stage itself. Otherwise, you may end up inserting everything, and that in turn will create too many duplicates, and you have to do a manual merge or upsert later on. So use upsert whenever possible. Practice number 22, try with real-time users while performing the UAT of data migration. This we came across in one of the use cases where we completed the data migration with the set of users whichever business identified, and after production only we came to know there is a different set of power users involved, and that in turn brought in some production level complications after deployment. So it is always advisable to have the real users needs to be identified at the stakeholder level during the planning stage itself. And always it is advisable to get the sign off when it comes to data migration. So as we recommended earlier, use the full copy for your data migration, and try with the power users and ask the power users to validate everything in a full copy, because full copy is an exact replica of production. Try to validate everything and get the sign off. So this includes any other integrations and everything involved in production. Those needs to be reflected in full copy as well. Even though I didn't mention explicitly here, it is always advisable. Your full copy should be a replica of production, and any other integration that were in production will always needs to be replicated as well in full copy, because based on your data migration, there may be you may be passing those informations for reporting purposes onto any other utilities as part of your nightly job or any other interfaces. It is always advisable to validate those as well after your migration. Your end-to-end, that includes your external migration or anything else involved, will be validated by your power users and get the sign-off from them before going live. And this practice number 23 is connected with 22. If you are applying power users and you are asking them to validate end-to-end and you are getting the sign-off from them before going live, then your UAT period need to be extended. So plan a detailed extended UAT period. Always have a plan B in place of a week or so buffer in addition to that UAT period when it comes to data migration, so that the users will get the confidence once they complete testing saying this data migration production deployment is going to be effective. And also whoever is involved from the data migration experts also, they will have enough space, enough time to migrate successfully onto production. Practice number 24, always it is recommended to refresh your org for both the QA and UAT before even starting any testing. This is a common use case, like during UAT, the business users might have identified 10 or 20 different issues with the data migration. And if at all the UAT itself happens for a 2-week time frame or a 3-week time frame, and there were multiple issues being addressed, then it is always advisable to document all the fixes, whatever we are doing, and then do one final round of refresh from production onto the UAT. Deploy all these changes one more time, do one round of final end-to-end testing before promoting to production. If at all the time permits and the budget permits, it is recommended to have this practice in place so that your production deployment related surprises will be avoided. Practice number 25, log everything as much as you can. This will help you with preparing a detailed deployment checklist document, and it will help you with any production support activities as well. There may be some known issues which you came across. There may be some known limitations with your target arc as part of data migration, or there may be some known failures as part of data migration, record-centric failures. Those things needs to be detailed. The document needs to be detailed, and those needs to be handed over to the respective persons in the target or whoever is going to maintain, so that they will be able to recover those data as and when required, and their ongoing production support will not be a nightmare. Practice number 26, always get the cutoff date very early in the game. So we came across another use case where the team, whoever performed the data migration, they overlooked that cutoff date. They didn't perform an end-to-end data migration in the full copy. And when they started production migration, it took nearly 72 hours for them to migrate successfully. And the challenge is the downtime was never communicated. The cutoff date was never finalized. And that in turn will bring in a lot of data integrity related issues. There will be a revenue loss due to this downtime, and the stakeholders were not informed well in advance. So your detailed plan should include what kind of effort it is going to be required for production migration, how long is the time that is going to take, get a cutoff date. Probably if there is a 72-hour downtime required, then 3 days prior to go live, you have to set the cutoff date for the source org, tell them not to make any changes. Or if at all that is not possible to avoid making changes, then we need to set the expectations clearly with your stakeholder, saying this is the cutoff date, and any other changes that you are doing, they have to either document, or we have to identify the delta of changes after go live and migrate only those delta of changes. So proper production deployment plan and mitigation should be in place. Practice number 27 is connected with the 26. Record the runtimes. It is always advisable when you are doing it in full copy to record how long it took to migrate account, contact, or any other objects. That individual recording of the runtime will help you to set the expectations clearly on how long it is going to take when the production deployment actually happens. So this graph, whatever I have placed here, the small chart that talks about customer sentiments. This is in general project management rule of thumb, like list of stakeholders you have to identify, both internal and external, and categorize them under what kind of user sentiment they will fall under. And accordingly, the communication cadence needs to be maintained. This is not a Salesforce-centric chart. This is more of a general project management centric chart, which will be used to understand the customer sentiments well ahead of time, and accordingly have your communication cadence and process in place. Practice number 28, it's a migration of time-based workflows to the target org. This is one common failure scenario which we came across in a couple of target orgs. That this is like Salesforce to Salesforce. Whenever you are migrating, you may came across this scenario. There may be time-based workflows which will run 72 hours, every 72 hours, or every 40 hours. This may be scheduled to run in your source org. And whenever you are moving from source to the target, obviously, whenever you are migrating this metadata from source to the target, at that time, this time-based workflow will be reset. So you need to set the expectations clearly to your business about this time-based workflow, and accordingly, you need to plan on how to execute those data once you move on to the target org. Practice number 29, code coverage requirements need to be met. This may bring in an idea. We are talking about data migration, where the code coverage will come into the picture. For an example, you may need, you are planning to deactivate all the triggers before you migrate the data. So in those cases, you may end up deactivate the trigger at the sandbox level, and then try to promote them via a change set or any other deployment utility that you may be using. In those cases, if at all your Salesforce system is not, the code coverage is not well maintained, then you may have to improve the code coverage before proceeding with that plan of deactivating the triggers and then reactivating them after deploying the data migration changes. So even though it is not related directly with data, you may foresee these challenges as part of production deployment. So always advisable to validate your org code coverage as part of your checklist for this deployment. Practice number 30 is again a specific error scenario where reports and dashboards, if at all it is maintained at the private folder level. If you are using any tools for metadata level migration, then this may not be accounted for. So the most common advisable option is identify these private folders, try to bring in them public for the time being, move them, and then bring it back into private at the target level. But you need to account for these scenarios as well as part of your data migration analysis or metadata analysis. Practice number 31, that's also a specific error scenario where you may have the multi-currency enabled in source but not on target. What to do? Or you may have some patch applied on source but not on target. In any such use case, you may need to account for as part of that migration. Other common thing which we came across, which I didn't include here explicitly, is another scenario specific, like your full copy may be upgraded to Winter 21 or some other latest release, but not your production. You may need to account for those as well. It is always advisable to not only check source production versus target production, it is always advisable to check target full copy versus target production as well to see whether those are in sync, any other patch level or Salesforce critical update level differences between these. So practice number 32 is always maintain a detailed checklist for deployment. Identify and ensure those checklists are addressed as part of deployment, and also maintain a post-deployment checklist as well. There may be a set of steps that you may need to follow as part of post-deployment, follow them as well. The checklist will be well maintained, and you may need to share those checklists with the person whoever is going to support the target or going forward. So any other minor data migration activity that they want to perform as a small patch, a repairable patch later on, they may be able to follow those checklists, and it will help them in the longer run with the maintenance as well. So practice number 33 is issue with any other foreign language characters. This is again a specific error scenario which we came across. Like we were doing the migration of files from one org to the other, and whenever we were extracting the files, we identified like the file naming convention that has been followed. It has some Asian characters on them, and we were using a data migration tool in place to migrate the data from one org to the other. And these characters, whenever you are placing it in Excel, as long as that the UTF related the Unicode is not maintained, then you may lose those characters, and you may get some special characters in turn at the file name level. So this issue with foreign language characters, UTF-8, you have to enable them properly whenever you are migrating. Practice number 34 is attachment specific migration. People tend to overlook attachments as part of this migrations. People may say like, the users may think like, okay, they want all the data, all the details to be migrated. They may overlook any attachments involved. There may be scenarios where a portion of attachment needs to be migrated, portion of files need to be migrated as well. So we need to account for both the use cases. When it comes to Salesforce Classic, it talks about attachments. Lightning, it talks about files. There were some of the, there were some org where the users were still using attachments for some of the existing managed packages. In those cases, even though they are in Lightning, they still use the attachments for old data associated details. So we ended up migrating those attachments, place them for their managed package, old managed package related extended support. And we included files for the typical file related support. When it comes to file migration, you need to account for content schema. The schema for files is different from attachments. You need to account for those as well. So practice number 35, the last one on this list, is error handling and associated tracking. I've prepared a detailed slide for that because there were two specific categories of errors you may came across. One is the job level error. As part of your transformation layer, you may come across this level of error. And the other one is a record level error or a row level error. So those are the two common error handling mechanisms which you may come across when it comes to the data migration. Job level error is like any connectivity related issues between source and target is one specific scenario for a job level error. The other one is any a database related schema change, either at the source level or the target level. So if you are doing a migration activity, a large volume of migration involved, and it is taking around 30 or 60 days of migration, at the same time, there may be scenarios where the existing production need to run in parallel while the migration is going to happen. In those cases, if there is any database schema related changes that happens in source or in production in the meanwhile, that may have an impact as well. Those are all like a job level error scenario. The record level error scenarios are like specific to that specific row, like if there is any validation error that happens due to some validation error set at the target R, you may come across that validation specific errors, or even Salesforce code level error, any Apex related backend logic related errors, some of the business rules written on existing triggers or existing Apex logics. Those are all Salesforce code level error that may happen as part of row level migration. Or the other thing is governor limit. You are reaching a specific limit while doing the data migration. The quick turnaround for governor limit is if at all it is just a very minimal level of limit has to be reset, then we can approach Salesforce support and increase the limit for the time being and then fix them. Or if it is a large volume of governor limit errors, then that possibility need to be addressed at the planning stage itself, and accordingly your mitigation plan needs to be in place. The last one is record locking error. This can be very well avoided as long as you understand the object hierarchy and what kind of relation between parent child, and accordingly you have to migrate. We came across a scenario where we were doing the data migration in parallel as multiple objects were involved in scope. In those cases, ensure this record locking error should not happen. As long as you are separating based on object hierarchy the dependent list in a sequential run rather than a parallel run, then we can avoid these kind of record locking specific errors. So those are at a high level summary. Whatever we have gone through is 6 key attributes for the data migration, 34 specific best practices that you can follow as part of this data migrations, plus their associated mapping of the tags based on those 6 attributes. What are all the common error types that you may come across? The last one is the reference material. There is one detailed data migration book written by David Mastry. It is available in Kindle as well as proper paperback in Amazon as well. If time permits, have a look at that material as well prior to your data migration, in addition to following these attributes. It will help you with a successful data migration, and it will help us to bring down the data migration failures from 38% to well below 10% or so. So without further delays, I will quickly move on to Q&A. Over to you, Selva.
Thanks, Arun. So attendees, if you have any questions, you can post your questions now, and I can ask these questions to Arun on your behalf. That way Arun will be able to answer those questions. And again, my name is Selva Pandian, and I head the Salesforce practice here at DemandGlow. Cool. Arun, I think I have some questions coming up. What do I do if my source data doesn't have a primary key to use as an external ID? So what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, in general, it is advisable to maintain the primary key at the source level. So, Selva. So if at all you are not able to maintain at the source level due to some permission issues or anything, at least at the transformation level, you have to maintain a unique primary key. And that will be maintained as an external ID while migrating to production.
Got it. So in the migration, we are moving from a legacy system, and the legacy system is going to be shut down. So what is the point in having those IDs in the target system?
Yeah, first is the testable attribute. Even to ensure whatever is there in legacy has been moved successfully, you need to have that ID in place so that you will be able to compare source and target and provide a detailed report. And the other thing is general report centric as well. So in case of even though you are shutting down legacy a month down the lane, but once you migrate all the data and after a week down the lane, if the customer is telling, hey, this specific record set was missing, then to compare and see whether the legacy is holding the data, this external ID will play a vital role.
Okay. Next question. When migrating data, is it okay to turn off validation rules, triggers, workflows, and so on?
Yeah, that's again a very tricky one. So yes, it may or may not. We need to have a proper understanding of the implications due to turning off, because there may be scenarios they might have written a detailed business rules centric based on whatever the data that we are inserting. So we need to have a clear understanding of them. So there were scenarios which there is a huge line of business rules written based on the inserted data. In those cases, it is not advisable to turn off. And due to that, the complications will arise during your production migration. Your time it may take extended time. So as part of full copy, you need to turn it on, run through and see how much time it is going to take, whether it is 72 or even 40 hours or whatever it is going to take. Set the expectations clearly with the customer about this downtime, and accordingly cutoff date and production go live and everything needs to be scheduled.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a nice thing, right? I think it's making sure you understand the time frame to do the production migration. It's critical because all these rules and triggers are going to actually have an extra time to process the records, right? So it's important that you do that, measure those time, and good. Now, so I think you addressed this, but again, the next question is, what are the different ways to eliminate duplicates while migrating data to Salesforce?
Yeah, most common thing is address them at the transformation level, like staging level you can address. Or the efficient one, which we usually recommend, is use the right tools, a deduper or whichever the demand tools, whichever is applicable, use them. That's the efficient way, and even upsert to certain extent will avoid duplicate as well.
Yeah, my own experience, I think it's always good to do at the source, right? Clean the data before starting the migration, as like Arun, you mentioned, right? Putting it in a staging server, clean up the data, and then move. Because again, once the project is done, many times people don't go and clean the data. So it's always a good idea to clean the data, migrate it, that's done, right? Because once the work is done, everybody has the next job to do, and you move on, and the duplicates stay in the system. So.
Correct. And when it comes to legacy systems, where if at all the relationship itself is not well maintained, then you may come across these duplicate scenarios at a very high level.
Sure. Good. Next question. How do I roll back updates to a record?
The only common thing is advisable one is take a backup, own backup or spanning tool. Take a complete backup and try to do a rollback, because we recommend a full rollback. So in that case, then it is recommended to have a backup data in place prior to your data migration. And if there is something super critical which you are not able to fix immediately, then go for a complete rollback.
Again, these tools do allow us to do selective rollbacks too, right? So again, depending on the scenarios, if, you just found that there's a batch of records which are having issues, you can still, the tools like this allow you to do it, right? So, and depending on the volume of record, again, if you do not want to go for a own backup or a spanning, you can use other options, like just use data export backup options as well.
Correct. Yeah. Selective rollback, since we highlighted not recommending, that's why.
Correct. Yeah, definitely, right? Because when you do, as you mentioned during your best practice, if you do selective rollback, you have to understand the entire hierarchy, all the relationship, and everything has to be thought through.
Correct. That's where, again, it brings in another point of your full copy, as long as it is a proper replica of production that includes integration and other things, then this can be avoided, and it can be identified at the UAT level.
Okay, got it. Next question. Again, I have seen that my migration is taking so long, right? What can I do?
Yeah, this is like if at all we followed the best practices, then prior to migration itself, we should know exactly how long the migration is going to take. And accordingly, we have to have the proper planning or backup plan in place. There were very rarely which I came across scenarios where even though it is a full copy refresh, still in production, it is taking a bit longer than full copy. This may be because there may be some scheduled batch run during the nightly thing. Even though we are deploying in the after business hours, it may take some time due to a scheduled nightly batch run or something else is running. So in those scenarios, we need to have some buffer in place. Even though you are planning for 6 hours, try to set the expectation of additional 4 hours or some other percentage of, as a plan B, you need to have that backup so that the job will complete on time.
Yeah, again, just to add to your point is, right, we have to understand Salesforce is a multi-tenant environment, which means that we are sharing the environment with different customers, right? So obviously, whatever the measure you do, as Arun mentioned, right, it's the buffering part is whatever buffer you can have. So just because it took 4 hours, we cannot assume it's 4 hours. Maybe add a 20% extra effort to just make sure that you are within the time frame, because Salesforce advises a lot on the data migration. You can look at it. So cool. So that's the next question. The new pick list values don't line up with legacy values. How do I migrate them?
As part of transformation layer, you need to check with the respective business users and come up with the alternate mapping. So if at all your pick list is not matching, either bring in those values onto target or otherwise identify the respective replacements in the target.
Okay. I think we might have a time for one last question. How do I pick the right tool for data migration, right? Is it a data loader or is it a middleware? So how can I make the decision for picking the right tool?
Yeah, again, depends on the volume involved and the complexity and everything will determine. It is not a simple straightforward answer saying data loader should be the right one or the middleware should be the right one. Depending on volume, how much is the business rules, what kind of data transformation required, accordingly the tool should be selected.
Yeah, I think we are very close to our 11 o'clock. Any other questions, team? Sindhija, back to you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. As mentioned, if you would like a copy of this presentation, please write to us at webinar@demandblue.com. With that, have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.